Hey, Brent here from Older Home Specialists, and in my hand right now I have a drainage intelligent report from Low Point Labs. This is a new program that I'm using to help analyze specific residential drainage issues that we're having. So the advantages to using a report like this is that it will call out certain areas before I even show up. This report isn't designed to be a so-called engineered report. This isn't specifically saying that there's immediately problems in the area. What it's calling out are potential red flags for where water is going to track, not only on the parcel itself, but in the parcels that are around it too, which is important. Where this would be used would be to target specific areas as far as accumulation areas, main water pathways, primary water pathways, secondary water pathways, complexes where they come together, and then to verify on that property that the drainage is adequate or that it exists at all. So these are the types of things that we do as a contractor in order to make sure that the property is assessed correctly. So this is just one tool of many that I would use, but this is very beneficial. And where I see this as beneficial is not just to a contractor, but also home inspections. There's a lot of people that purchase properties, say in July, August. They have no idea what they're actually getting or what underlying problems there could be. So this would help a home inspector to verify certain areas and make sure that they're operating with the way that they're supposed to. I could see how this would be beneficial to realtors, to protect their clients, to make sure that they're not getting stuck with some problem that they have no idea what could possibly happen. The thing about these reports is you're going to need to read them and assess them correctly. Just because it says that there's a certain area where it's a hot spot and we can see water's coming in, that doesn't mean necessarily there's a problem. It means that that's a special area that we need to pay attention to verify that the drainage is working correctly. So anyways, we're going to go through a couple of these reports, and I want to show you exactly how to read them and the data that's in this and how useful it is. Okay, so I'm out here on a 5-acre parcel in Cameron Park, and so we're going to go ahead and read this report, and let's see how good the data is. So basically, it's exactly as it says. We have a primary pathway coming straight through here that bisects the property. Everything is pulling down in this direction. It's showing me topographically right here that the water comes down in sheet flow. You can see with the hillside right here, everything pulling this way. It shows on this report right here that everything falls. It almost flattens out right here, but then it doesn't really know where to go. The report is very accurate, but then ultimately it's just pulling straight down to the main water pathway down this way. Who built that culvert? Looks undersized. I better check the report on that. So now we're on the back side of the property. We followed this main water pathway, this primary water pathway all the way down to here, and it's showing a convergence zone right here. And that's obviously where the water's coming this way, meeting together, and then the property owner told me that this actually floods right here. And so on a property like this, a lot of this may seem very basic, but what these reports actually do is they will call out certain areas for the microtopography. So it's really designed for residential assessment on a smaller scale so that we can really call out specific problems. That is the whole point in this report. And so far it's extremely, I'd say 100% accurate for what I'm seeing on this. Okay, so being on the back side of the property, I can look at this report and I can say we have the primary pathway, we have a convergence point right here, but it's also calling out all the micro pathways. It's pulling, I can look at this property and I can see exactly where somebody would think the water was just pulling that way. It doesn't, it divides. It starts coming this way, part of it goes that way, and then there's actually an accumulation zone in the front of the house. So this is exactly what we're talking about when we say that when you use these reports correctly, this is going to be an extremely valuable tool to call out specific problems so that you can verify the drainage that you have, and then in designing as well so that you can make sure and target certain areas. If I know that the topography is pulling this way from a high point and I see data like this, I'm going to be inclined to say, hey, you know what? Let's do a couple tiers of drainage. Let's get the primary amount of water away before it even makes it that way, and then have a secondary system closer to the foundation or wherever I decide that it should be installed. But this is all the data that's in this report, and this is exactly why I use it. It helps me assess properties before I even get there, so I'm not showing up blindly. It's saving me time. It's calling out specific things. All the data that the client gives me is very useful, but it's not going to be the end story. And neither is this the end story. You have to take all of these clues and put them together and correctly assess what each parcel is encountering as far as drainage and the way that water's moving on the property. All right, so this is a job that we've been working on here, and this is a great example of how this report is going to work well for you. So you can see how the topography is pulling all this way. There is a culvert on the other side where generally a lot of the water will collect on that side, but when you get these heavy downpours, all the sheet flow is coming this way. So this seems like it's very basic, like most people should be able to figure this out, but when it's broken down on this report, we can actually see exactly where water channels through the different pathways, which is important. So we were lucky enough to be able to see this property when it went under a heavy storm, and we were actually able to verify how valid this report is, and it actually gave us more information as well. So the water is coming through this way, but there's a primary pathway of convergence where water is actually not only pulling this way, but pulling this way as well. This is good information for us because now that we have all this information, we've seen it firsthand, we've verified it by the report, now we can make additional changes that we need to in order to make this property drain correctly. Right here, we have our new concrete driveway that Francisco finished. And then we have our trench drains running out right here. So what we're going to do is a French drain all along both sides with a side-by-side so that we can get our trench drains tied into that portion of it. This is exactly where we're going to install our French drain and our side-by-side system right here. One of the big benefits of using this intelligence report is it gives me an upper hand and gives me the confidence to know that the plan that we're putting together is actually going to work. The clients also like to see when we show up with something like this because it verifies what they're saying and gives them additional confidence in us, but also confidence in the fact that we're analyzing the parcel correctly and really understanding which way the water's going, what soil type it is, how much water we're actually dealing with at any particular given downpour. So these are the areas where this report is very useful for us and also our clients as well. So right here, you can actually see on the soil from this last storm exactly where the water is tracking on this property, and it lines up exactly with what this report says. All of the water tracking this way, you can still see some of the erosion that was caused in the soil as it comes through here, but incredibly accurate when this report was dialed in to show us even more information about which way the water's going and all the complex convergence points, the way that it's getting hammered with water. So it gives me even more faith in knowing what we're designing is going to work under the worst of circumstances. With the topography, the way that everything's pulling down and the data we got from this report, we're always going to be directing the water where it needs to go. Water's always going to seek the lowest level that it can, whether it's in the ground or whether it's on the surface. So this is exactly why we pulled our drain system right along here, and where we ended up daylighting it down here for the water to hit the main water channel that runs through this property right here. So you can see this is where we daylighted the system out to the lowest point right here. We're going to go ahead and get a critter guard on that to make sure that no critters go up the outlet. But this is a perfect example of the way that you would want to run your system so that we're pulling water in the direction that it wants to go while we're managing the water on the surface from around the structure. But interestingly enough, over here, we were able to observe exactly where the water is flowing from this report. And it was actually, the data on it was not surprisingly, it's just incredibly accurate, the way that this water flows this way. So you would think that most of it was pulling this way, but from the report and the sheet flow that we verified, you can see that there's many convergence points that come through, not only right here, but also on this side of the property as well. The water comes straight up this way, holds in the garden right here. It was great to verify under that storm because then we could see exactly how accurate this was, and it actually pointed out even more areas of concern that we should be looking at and targeting. So this water comes straight through right here. It tends to pool up right over here, which aligns with the previous owner's attempt to repair this because there was some piping that was installed this way. But this is just one more example of how useful these reports would be, because it breaks it down to micro areas where it looks like everything's coming one way and that it should be really basic, but even to an experienced eye, it points out even more areas where the water is channeling through. And so when we can capture that water before it's problematic, that's exactly what we want to do. So this report is helping us target specific areas. Even when things look very basic, they're not basic. And it was just great that we were able to verify that through the rain that came. Okay, so we went ahead and we assessed a fairly basic property. Now I want to show you one that's more complex. This is somebody that called me out for some advice. Basically, this property is flooding in the back to the point where when we're getting those heavy downpours, the guy's standing out there with galoshes in the middle of his yard. This is going to demonstrate here exactly how useful this would be to somebody who was buying a property not knowing what they're getting, because that's exactly what happened to this person. Is they purchased a property for a specific reason, now finding out that this property isn't quite as useful as they thought it was going to be. And so right here we can see the aerial view of the property, and then this report breaks it down to what we can see where the water is tracking. Now this is so interesting because this property, actually in the report itself, it shows that this particular parcel accumulates from almost 10 acres of land all the way around this property, all converge into the different pathways, and you can see how it comes straight down here. It even estimates where there's going to be culverts, and it's spot on. It's showing where the accumulation zones are, all the secondary pathways, how it's pulling down here, and how everything converges on this property straight to the structure. And then I've seen this property when it's flooding, and this is spot on to what it's doing. It accumulates right here where it converges from another main water pathway coming this way, and then everything comes together right through the guy's backyard. There's an accumulation point right here. It continues on, and then this heads over here to the municipal portion where it holds water all the time. This is an area where when it rains, the water table rises a lot. And so when the water table's rising, and the infiltration rate has completely absorbed, it's low and it's absorbed everything it's going to, then water's going to stand there. And so that could be considered a wetland in some circumstances. There's a specific terminology for that, but basically it holds water there all the time. This water continues down, all the way down, but you can see how many pathways intersect on this property. If this person had known this in advance, they probably would have never gotten the property. So this is just another example of how important this is. This report also calls out specific areas. So when it's say number 1, you can come right up here to number 1, and it shows me right there, there's a complex area right there, and the priority is high. It's showing me that the convergence accumulation complex adjacent to the S side of the home with 2 convergent points where flow paths from the southwest, west, south converge with a major severity accumulation zone. Significant estimated contributing area approximately 10 acres. This guy's getting it from all directions. So just another example of how specific and data-packed these reports are. It's going to call out the type of soil that's native to the area. That doesn't account for if things were changed over the years. This is just telling us generally in the area, this is what you should expect. And so everything corresponds with the numbers that are on this. So you can go right back to this and you can see exactly what you have on every property. And this is the reason why it even breaks down terminology for you, so you can see what these words are and what the definition are. It helps out the layman to assess. But it goes in further. It shows weather climate. It shows what to expect year through year, the amounts that you could expect total. 1 inch in a 24-hour period, and more than 1 inch in a 24-hour period in an hour. It breaks everything down. Max single day, 4.77 inches. This is cram-packed with stuff information that would be super useful to many different people. Okay, so along with this report that we have here, we also have a manual on how to read a drainage intelligence report. And so this is going to be useful pretty much for everybody, but not only that, for somebody who's just reading this as a layman that doesn't understand really what this report reads. So it sort of breaks it down here into 3 separate categories: individual and composite features. So that would be what each drainage feature looks like and what it means. The second portion would be the importance and hierarchy. So that would be how to prioritize the different features that you see on the report. And then inspection guidance. And that's going to be how to use the report and inform and prioritize on-site inspections. So you can see there's descriptive areas of each portion of this report. So you have contour lines that you would be reading, as far as that'll tell you what the topography is, surrounding areas, how water's moving, building footprint and parcel boundaries. So it's showing you exactly where the boundaries of the parcel lie. The drainage pathways. So a solid blue would be a primary pathway. The dotted lines would be a secondary pathway that are leading together. When they meet, it's a convergence point. Sometimes they can be complex convergence points where everything might meet in an area where there's an accumulation area. So right here you can see the convergence points coming together. These all correspond with the numbers that are on the actual report itself. So you can refer straight back to, you have the green areas would be an accumulation zone. That's where the topography is showing 1% or less, where water sheet flow is going to be slowed in that area. A convergence accumulation complex would be the same thing, where pathways are coming together into an accumulation area. The yellowish, orangish areas, that's going to be depression, so that's an area of holding. So that shows that basically the grade of the ground is dropping to 4 inches or somewhere in the area or more, where it's actually holding water in that area. So that would be somewhere you would want to pay close attention to. Second portion here is the importance and the hierarchy. So basically, if it says high on your report, that's going to be an area that you want to pay close attention to in evaluating exactly what the structure, what the drainage is in that area, what the soil type is, how this water's moving, where it is. So we have high, moderate, and low. And so that kind of gives you an idea of the important areas that you really want to pay close attention to. And then part 3 is an inspection guidance. So this inspection guidance is broken up into 2 areas. Basically, these are areas that would be in the proximity of the structure, and then this would be in surrounding areas in the yard where it's not close to the structure and how they would be treated differently. Most of the time you want to focus on the most important areas is going to be where you're going to have settling in your foundation, humidity under the house, mold under the house, compromising your foundation. And then in the yard, it shows you just areas that are holding water that are potentially problems, but don't have anything to do with the structure. All right, so we've gone over a couple different reports here. And the main thing that I want to highlight is when you're dealing with drainage issues, these are substantial, important issues that have to be assessed correctly. Every tool that we use is designed to correctly assess each situation for your parcel in order to make the best suggestions for you. So this is what makes us different than everybody else. Basically, what everybody else is doing is showing up at your property, spending 20 minutes and giving it their best guess at what they think you need. What we're doing is analyzing your property before we even get there so that we have the best suggestions for you after we correctly assess all the information that you give us and everything that we can pull up from our reports and every other tool that we use. So if you're having specific drainage issues or you suspect you are, feel free to reach out to me. I'll make a free in-home consultation for you. We can look at your property. We can see what's going on. Also, feel free to check out Low Point Labs at lowpointlabs.com, and you can see what they're offering as far as these reports are concerned and get your screening report, and it will give you ideas of what exactly is going on your property. So if I wasn't using these drainage intelligence reports, I would be out here something like this.